Are we good? Sorry about... Actually, this isn't too bad. It's covering up some of my stuff. My office is a bit of a mess today because I'm in the process of kind of cleaning it up, which is part of a whole yearly process where we're cleaning every room in the house, making adjustments and improvements where we can. Anyways, hi! Welcome to Snacks and Stacks. If you're new around here, I like to talk about books, TV shows, and movies, and this is my October wrap-up. I'm going to mainly just talk about books today because I haven't really collected my thoughts on the shows and movies I've watched. I've only watched one movie, actually. So I want to take some time to do that before I yap about it. This month, I read 12 books, and I read 6 audio, 4 physical, and 2 digitally. I did not rate one of my books that I read, and I'll talk about that a bit later. I gave 2 3.5 stars, 5 4 stars, 1 4.5 stars, and 3 5 stars. So it was a really good reading month. I had a lot of great books. So this might be a pretty long video, but I hope you'll stick around. If not, you can always go down. I try to put timestamps in for each book. So let's get started. I read 3 sequels. One was Killer Instinct by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is part of the Naturals series. It's a YA crime thriller series. Not really thriller, I guess, more mystery. And it's kind of based on criminal profiling. We have a group of teenagers who have these natural gifts that they have fostered through pretty traumatic childhoods. And they are kind of like a boarding school with the FBI, and the FBI is using them on... They're supposed to be using them for cold cases, but currently they keep putting their noses in active cases, and this is no different. So we have Cassie, who is kind of our main character, and she has the profiling natural ability, and so she and another profiler in this teenage group is working on a case that has some connection to him as well. It's been a bit since I was listening to the book. I don't have the character's names written, but it is also one of her love interests. And so it is very fast paced. These books take a lot of twists and turns. If you're like me and you've watched a lot of crime shows, the plot does feel like repetitive and a reiteration of probably something you've seen before, but it takes its own little unique takes on it, and I did enjoy it. I wasn't able to guess all of it, which is always nice. And so I think that, including with just like a growing affection for these teenage kids, also helps with this book series as well. I think they are very real, very lovable, and very much like cool kids to like follow. So yeah, and another sequel I read was Apothecary Diaries, light novel, volume 5. I'm having a hard time going through these books, although I love the anime. I just find that the writing style and the translation to be really hard to read at times. It's very repetitive. It's a little slow and like meandering. You don't really know the point, which I'm usually fine with. Like you'll see I have some slice of life books and shows that I do like, but I think when it comes in a novel, I want there to be some sort of like arc, and that's just not here, especially in this volume. We're following Mao Mao as she's going into the West and, you know, revealing more things, and it's just slow building. So I was trying to follow a read-along group. They are at like volume 8 already, so I do need to catch up. But it's very hard because, like I said, the writing is a little bit stilted at times. And it's also through Hoopla, which is my choice. And that is either on my phone or my iPad. And both those things don't conduce like a fun reading space for me. But that is why I'm, you know, so slow on that one. The other sequel I read was Wheel of Wrath by A.A. Vora. It is an arc from Netgalley, so thank you very much. So that is a sequel to Spin of Fate, and this series follows this magic system that is based on karma and a caste system in which your morality places you in a separate realm. However, once you're placed there, your children, when they're born, also follows that placement. So if you think about it, a baby can't have morality. And so there's this conflict right now that is a group of people who wants to balance the realms out, especially for the young people, because we have babies being born in the lower realms and having a way lesser way of life than babies and children who are born in the higher realms. This first book is really just an introduction to the world, our three main characters. And in the second book, we follow two more characters, and we're also expanding into more of the higher and lower realms. In the second book, we also see more of these planetary beasts and magical creatures that appear, which is always my favorite. And yeah, I just really thought the character work was done very well. I like the balance between our original three characters and these two new characters we get, because our three characters have been through it, so they're a bit angsty in book 2, and having this balance of the other two really kept the book going for me without feeling really annoyed, which is mostly a me thing. I'm just getting a bit too old, I think, or I don't want to read about super angsty teens all the time. So it also depends on when I pick up a young adult book, how much have I been reading? How much do the characters, feel like other angsty characters? And so that's part of it too, and I know that. But yes, the pacing was pretty good. The general pacing was slow in the beginning, but it gets better as it goes on. So I highly recommend people to pick up Spin of Fate if you like younger characters placed in complex, hard magic systems. It's very interesting. It's pretty unique to me. I haven't seen this a lot, and yeah, I highly recommend this series. The new book will be out in November. I'll put the date up here because I think it's either November 11th or 18th. I can't remember which one. So those are all the sequels. Now we can talk about the unrated book, which is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This I listened on audio. It is for my in-person book club, which allows me to read new things that I would never pick up, and this being one of them. I don't normally pick up horror. I actually had a very entertaining time. I refused to listen to this book at night, although I did listen a couple times while I was working on stuff. It happened to be nighttime, and then I refused to listen to any more. And because of that, I'm not sure if it was the book combination, but it went from like creepy, scary to comedic, which I don't know if it's the point or it is the way horror goes. And so I did not rate it because I don't know that audience or the intention very well, and so I don't want to put a rating to it. If I was to just rate it for entertainment value, I would say about 3.5 stars. I finished it. I thought it was a good time. We had a great conversation about it at the get-together, but I still think that my critical brain, or the way my brain works, was like, why is this happening? Why are these the choices these characters are making? Very frustrated with certain things. And although I find that I might have that in romance, I normally think it's like the levity of it is like not that big a deal. But when you have like haunted puppets, don't you want to do something like that? And this was mentioned in our discussion as well, like where is the urgency? So yeah, although I had a good time and it was a great conversation, it's not really something that I as a reader pick up. And it's not really something that influenced me to want to read more horror like this. It's quite gory. There's quite spots where I was like, I could have done without that detail. So not my kind of horror genre book. But I did try another horror. This time it was a graphic novel called The Night Eaters, She Who Eats the Night. This is probably more of my horror type of book. I gave this 4 stars. The premise of this is we're going back and forth in time, and we follow Aipo, who is a grumpy mother, and we explore her past as she is in Hong Kong, but also now as a mother to twins, adult twins, in the United States. Millie and Billy have just, gotten through COVID, and they are running a restaurant, so you can imagine how much they're trying to work and make sure their restaurant has good attention, and they're working very hard to try to make everything work after COVID as everything is opening back up. Aipo, however, decides that they need to help with the vacant house across the street and pushes them to close for a day and to go clean up the house. She's always saying that they need to learn how to grow something. Like I said, am a newbie to the horror genre, so I really picked this up because I love the cover, and I thought that with pictorial imagery, it was better than my brain imagery, which could think of things that might be more horrible than what is on page. So we have creepy dolls in this one as well. I will show you. Okay. But yeah, I really like the story. I liked where it's going. This is very much just an introduction to the world. I'm interested to see what the next 2 books will bring. The illustration style is very sketchy, and it kind of lends to its like frantic feeling. There's definitely some supernatural stuff going on in here, and some of it has to do with Aipo and her husband, and they're like who they are, what they are. So it's very interesting. I really liked it, and I liked some of the comedic breaks that we get in this. It's not too crazy and weird, but it works. It works really well. So this is probably more where I will take my horror journey. So the next book that I read this month was a 5-star read. It took me a long time to finish it. I mostly read it last month probably, but A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This is an epic standalone fantasy that is within the world of A Priory of the Orange Tree. So although I had like a little section in the beginning that was about sequels, this is technically a prequel. It's technically a standalone. You do not need to read the other books to really understand this one, especially because this is number 0. I do think that her writing in this one is way better. If you want to get good and then great, you should read Priory first and then read this one. I put Priory at a 4, I believe, but this I put at a 5. I loved this book so much. I tabbed a lot of it. I almost want to reread it, and for a giant tome, that is kind of crazy. I have it on my knee because it's so heavy. So let me tell you what it's about. This is an epic fantasy that goes through a period called the Great Sorrow, where worms have risen and wreak havoc on a vast fantasy world full of different beliefs and kingdoms. We follow people in the north, south, east, and west. We follow people who are young, who are older. We follow people of different faith. We have more mythical creatures in this. And yeah, so you find out in A Priory of the Orange Tree, and it's not really a spoiler, that there is a creature called the Nameless One, who is this devastating and enormous red worm. And when I say worm, I don't mean worm like a little, bug. I'm talking about a dragon that has legs and wreaks havoc everywhere. 500 years ago, the Nameless One was defeated. In the West, they believe that the Berethnid Queendom is what keeps him at bay. In the East, we have dragon gods, so think more like Eastern dragons that kind of move in the water mostly. They are revered as gods, and they have been asleep for a long time. And in the South, there's a priory of warrior women who've been training for 500 years in case the worms came back. And because it's been 500 years, a lot of the newer recruits don't feel that it is necessary. They believe that the Nameless One was defeated and will not come back. We're fine. Why are we being so strict and so worried? And so that is kind of the premise of the book. Of course, there's more to it, but it would take me 2 hours probably to go through everything. The world that Samantha Shannon gives us is plentiful, and the characters are real and flawed and wonderful. I don't even know if I could pick a favorite, but Tenuva would be one of my top favorite characters of all time. I found myself way more attached to these characters than the characters in Priory. I loved how normal the LGBTQ plus relationships are in this world. I love that we explored so many different types of relationships on top of this ongoing conflict. As we're like setting foot into everyone's world and figuring out what everyone's doing, all of a sudden something happens that kind of just makes everyone on edge, and everyone's trying to figure out how to solve this huge conflict with these monsters, these worms and dragons. It plays on themes of organized religion, loss and grief, good versus evil, motherhood, relationships with people, new relationships, and relationships that have been formed and going on for a long time. It is not perfect, but I will defend it forever. I love this book so much. I really hope you'll give it a chance. I know it is big and scary, but if you love good character work and vast, epic systems, and you don't want to read like a huge series, everything in this book, it's very satisfying, very, very well self-contained. Another 5-star read I read basically, probably was because I was listening to it, so around the same time, was Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This is about Ike and Buddy Lee, and they never got around to accepting that their sons were gay and married to each other. Now it's too late. Their sons were murdered, and the case has kind of fallen to the side. There's not new information about it. And both the fathers feel a sense of like they want to have vengeance and they want to redeem themselves in some way for their boys. And they both come from criminal backgrounds. Ike is now like a successful lawn care entrepreneur. He has a business to run. And Buddy Lee, he actually got fired because he wanted time off to grieve his son and didn't get it. He's not doing so great. And so Buddy Lee kind of convinces Ike, and other things happen that convinces Ike to partner up and get information so that they can then avenge their boys. The whole time I'm listening to this book, it felt like, and this is part of the reason why it's a 5-star book, it's got that little extra that is a connection to my own life and my upbringing, right? This makes me think of me sitting on the couch with my dad and watching one of his favorite movies. His movies were always like action full, but there's always like a message in there of like morality, like humanity, and some sort of messaging in there that improves mankind. Sorry. I'm like a little bit choking up about this, which is kind of silly, but I couldn't help but root for the characters in this book. I felt the longing to be with your family member, the grief that they were feeling, and I was very emotional about their journey to accept their sons and how they felt like it was too late. This book touches on racial indifferences, obviously, as Ike, well, not obviously because I didn't tell you, but Ike is a black man and Buddy Lee is a white man. And so they talk through some of the things that Buddy Lee never really understood as like being racist. They talk through how their son's being gay and what happened to their relationship. And it also just shows like how far a father could go against the corruption that is, I can't say, but it's there. The messaging in this is strong. And I think this is great. It's so fast-paced. It's also easily readable, like rereadable, because it's just like those stories that you know and you love and you don't mind reading over and over again. So I highly recommend Razorblade Tears. It's a fantastic time, and it is violent, which I normally don't enjoy, but kind of rooted for them. So I am excited to read other books by S.A. Cosby because I think he's actually from around my area, which is very cool. The next book I read is a buddy read with Chelsea from Libraries and Lattes, and we read House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. I have been wanting to read this book forever. And every time I'm like, it's fall, let's read it. And then I'll be like, oh, it's winter, can't read it. Which is silly, but also it was perfect timing to read this book. It was spooky, kind of eerie, and it's got this perfect like fairy tale-esque with like darkness in front of it vibe. It was perfect time to read it. I gave it 4 stars. Annalie is one of 12 Talmas sisters, and there seems to be some sort of curse. Her sisters keep dying one by one in mysterious circumstances. They have been growing up in a place called Highmore, which is near the sea. It's very secluded, and she never really realized how secluded she is until her sisters start to die, and no one seems to believe her, and a younger sister of hers is starting to see visions of ghosts and more creepy things. She doesn't know if they are cursed, and if they are, is she able to break the curse before more sisters die? This is full of ball gowns and inspiration from the 12 Dancing Princesses. She turns all of that beautiful fairy tale-esque imagery into this creepy gothic ballroom. It is amazing. I think, okay, so this honestly would have been a 5-star book if it wasn't for the romance, which I always think Erin A. Craig doesn't do a great job with. I feel like, okay, side tangent. Why do these YA stories have a romance? It's not a strong thing that happens. Like it takes away, I think. And if it wasn't for that, this would have been a perfect book about sisterhood, about the curse, about everything. Like okay, back to this. There's so much imagery in here that was done so well. I wrote deliciously spooky. It was, and the fantasy elements were so enjoyable. I love how brave Annalie is and her relationship with her sisters. I loved that, you know, she was kind of pushing for this resolution, and although some of it was a bit predictable, some of it was really not. And so I thought it was just fantastic. The narrator for this had the perfect kind of like young voice that kept me grounded in the fact that this is a young lady we're talking about, so it's not as silly, and the way she talked, like the atmosphere really came to life, and it was great. If you love like a darker fairy tale, this is perfect. I have so many books. Okay, the next book I read was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I was reading a lot of fantasy, and I needed a break. And yes, this is paranormal, but it really is contained in this world, and the only fantastical thing is like, yeah, werewolves and vampires also live here, and there's conflict between them, and we're trying to have an alliance. Everything else felt like we are here on Earth doing Earth things. So there's some world building to this. You know, the werewolves have their kind of system, the vampires have their system, but a lot of it felt very familiar if you are used to stories of the two of them. And so it was a great little break. I gave this 4 stars because it was a lot of fun. There's a mystery element to this. Let me tell you what it's about. Misery Lark is a vampire who agrees to marry the alpha of the wares in an alliance for peace between the two species. Lo, who is the alpha, surprises her with how he rules his pack. He is compassionate. He rules with a lot of kindness, and he's also very protective of Misery. But this protection does not stop her from her secret mission to find the Bax's thing. But can I just tell you, it's a person. It's the person that she cares about. I know some parts of this book, I was making some crazy ass faces because some parts of this book, the spice scenes were nuts, okay? You have to be accepting of some weird, spicy scenes. However, I had a great time. I had guests over the weekend I started this, and I kept sneaking into my room to read it. My mother-in-law and brother come once in a while, and they read too. So if I saw them reading, I would just zip into my room and start reading this. I like the relationship between Lo and Misery. There is something about the way Ali Hazelwood writes these two characters that make me just want them to be together. I'm like, yes, do it. Be weird. I liked that the main character, Misery, she was sweet and funny, and she was starting to find a way to be part of a community that she's never really been able to do before, based on just past experiences. The romance was a little weird and honestly so damn horny. So if you're not a big spice lover, this will not be for you. The next book I read, and I also really liked, was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I know it's pretty popular right now, so I'm not sure how much I have to tell you about it, but it's based in the 1980s when Joan Goodwin, a professor of physics and astronomy, this is a fake person, gets accepted as one of the few women to become part of the new space shuttle training program in NASA. So this book goes back and forth in time as Joan is training with this group of trainees. They start getting to know one another. They become friends. She falls in love with someone. And a few years after, as they are on missions and this kind of thing happens and it changes everything. It happens pretty early in the book, but I won't say. I thought this was a beautiful love story. Please don't miss that it is Atmosphere, a love story, because that is the main chunk of this book. It has a backdrop of NASA, the 80s, stargazing. I like Joan as a character. I loved her growth and her passion, her finding out why she thought she was never gonna have a relationship. It wasn't because she's asexual. I grew to like a lot of the team members, so it was a bittersweet book. This book had a very interesting trajectory as I was reading as well, because I was listening to it while I was working. And so many of the book in the beginning parts, middle parts, it would get really sad. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to show up on a Teams call with tears coming down my face or looking like I've cried. So I had to take a break and stop because another friend of mine told me that the ending of the book broke her. So I was like, oh my God, I cannot listen to this while I'm at work. And I left 2 hours for listening while I was cleaning. But then I kept getting interrupted while I was cleaning. So I didn't feel like I had the full emotion. So I did feel like the beginning parts of the book were sadder than the ending, which is quite silly if you really think about what happens. This is more of a character piece with some plot that kind of moves it along, which is great. I would say that if I had any picky things about this book, it would be I wanted more NASA. I wanted more about her job and the training and how she felt. Joan gets to go on one mission, and we did hear about that. So that was also interesting. I also did not love the ending. It was a bit abrupt. Things happened, and then it was just like, story's over. And it might just be because I'm spoiled in the romance book category. Like, this is more literary fiction. The romance books, you get like an epilogue. You get like a nice little bow. You don't get this here. It's a little frustrating. I want to know more about what is going to happen to Joan. But I guess it is a bit open-ended, which I cannot fault it for, but it's not my favorite. So yes, it is a 4.5 because I think it's rereadable, but it's not something I would pick up all the time. It would be like, I want to feel a lot of things, and maybe then I would re-pick it up. But yeah, it's a great book. I totally get the hype. I listened to The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. This is a historical fiction take on a real historical figure, Belle DaCosta Green, who was the personal librarian to J.P. Morgan and basically curated a collection of rare books, manuscripts, and artwork for the Morgan Library. It is now the Morgan Library and Museum in New York. It's very famous. I actually did not know very much about it, but after reading a little bit of this book, I started looking it up, and it is gorgeous. Definitely one of the places I want to go and see, and I think Belle DaCosta Green was a fascinating woman. It goes through about 20 years of her life, from when the nephew comes up to her and says, hey, I have a job that you might be interested in, to her working for JP Morgan. This kind of relationship that they have, it is fictional because you don't know, because Belle actually burned all her paperwork before she died, like all of her journals and letters and personal paperwork. She was a colored woman who lived as a white woman, and it was a big secret that she had to keep, and that's why she burned all her papers. This was from 1905 to 1924. This is back in the day where civil rights was not a thing yet, and also the start of World War I. So a lot of things happen in the background of this book. I gave this a 3.5 because as fascinating as I find her, as fascinating as I find art, rare books, and manuscripts, the story itself felt a little so-so to me. I was more interested in her as a person than the story as it was being told. Obviously, I know a lot of it is fiction because it's told from her perspective, and we can only, think so much of what she might be feeling or might be thinking. So I think that kind of swayed me into thinking that this is untrue. I don't know how I feel about this. I could see how she probably felt that way about a lot of things too. A lot of the main conflicts that the authors decided to focus on, like her romance and her relationships with these people, was interesting, but it wasn't what I was interested in. Therefore, I think the conflicts in this book didn't feel like very real, or it felt really repetitive. I do find her as a historical figure to be extraordinary though, and I would love to learn more about her. I did think that as two authors that wrote one book, it felt really cohesive, and the book itself is good. It's just not my kind of book. It's written well, and if you like biopics, this would be a great book for you. The last book I read, I needed something light, and I had been wanting to pick up Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You. This is a manga. I saw it while Barnes & Noble had a sale the other day. It was buy one, get one half off. I was a dum-dum, and I bought a book for my son that he already had, and I didn't get a receipt. That's a whole story. But I also got this for myself. And it is so cute. It is very cute. It's very slice of life. It's cute in a way that isn't creepy, which is great because there is a 20-year age gap between these two. This is about this man who works a day job and is quite tired and stressful and works overtime a lot. And his kind of like happy place is to go to this supermarket because there's this teller that's always there and she always has a big smile and she's very friendly. And he says that she kind of like makes his day better in a non-creepy way. He reassures that. For some reason, he decides he wanted to smoke. He goes and he tries to find like a smoking area, and she finds this girl in the back who's smoking as well. And she's like, yeah, you can come smoke back here. And he's talking to her and she kind of points out, oh yeah, you're always in that girl's line, even when the other line is shorter. And he's like, oh, I'm not being weird and creepy, I promise. And so she kind of makes a comment about it and they become friends. He occasionally will go and, you know, to the back and smoke with her and talk with her about life, whatever. Little does he know, this is the girl that he thinks is a breath of fresh air because like she lets down her guard and in the back she's just regular, kind of scary. She's got piercings. She's, you know, kind of tough. She's got a leather jacket. And he doesn't realize they're the same person. And so she's kind of playing this trick on him. And he's kind of, you know, it's just a story of a friendship that's blossoming right now. And it's very nice. It's such a nice, like, breath of fresh air. Every chapter is enjoyable. Just two people getting to know each other. He just makes a lot of great faces. I hope it focuses. So yeah, if you're into slice of life, I'm not even sure if this is really a romance, but it's a fun time. It's a nice break from any heavy book that you might be reading about racial injustices, as I have been, or, you know, injustices in people and who we love and all that stuff. This was such a nice little break. I gave it 5 stars. I love books that give me, like, makes me feel like I can breathe again, especially if it's been a rough time. So highly recommend this little manga. I was gonna go out and buy more, but I'm not really supposed to be buying books. It was an illegal buy. But I did see that my library has these, so I'm probably gonna pick them up and enjoy more of them. And my dog is telling me that I have been talking for nearly an hour. I need to go. I hope you read amazing books in October, and if you did, please leave them below. If you could like this video, it would help me out a lot. If you like me yapping at you about books and TV shows, please subscribe. And yeah, happy snacking, happy reading, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.